Good day and welcome to Irish Highlander, Japanese Highlanders, Louisbourg 1758 Amphibious Assault. This is an 18th century version of D-Day, whereby the British will attempt to land at Kennington Cove on the French colony of Ile Royale to attack the fortress of Louisbourg in present-day Nova Scotia, Canada. Today's game will utilize aspects of the Field of Glory Renaissance rulebook, which are wargaming rules for Renaissance tabletop gaming, but can also be utilized for 18th century as well. Taking a look at our battlefield this morning, we have British transports coming from the North Atlantic onto the beach at Kennington Cove. The British forces this morning consist of the entire grenadier companies of every regiment taking part in the Louisbourg campaign. We also have several companies of the 78th Fraser's Highlanders coming in as support. We have a composite light infantry battalion made up of one company each from every regiment in the British Army at the time for this expedition. We also have a second division of grenadiers made up of other various companies from the regiments assaulting the fortress. And finally, we have a Ranger Brigade made up of 8 Ranger companies which took part in the Louisbourg campaign. The amazing thing about the present condition of Kennington Cove in Cape Breton Island of Nova Scotia is that it virtually has remained unchanged since this battle in 1758. Unfortunately, I do not have visuals to be able to actually put that in, but I do have several different terrain effects showing that just off of the beach there was a heavily forested area. The water markers indicate where the waves are coming in onto the defenses for the French. The French defenses are fieldworks garrisoned by detachments of the garrison, which would be about 3 kilometers away up the coast. We have Les Compagnies Franches de la Marine. We have various detachments of the Louisbourg militia as well. The Regiment Combi has sent down 2 companies. We also have in reserve another Compagnie Franche company and a company from the Volontaires Étrangers, which were actually a French light infantry regiment raised in Europe but sent over with the Regiment Combi to reinforce Louisbourg just prior to the siege. In fact, the Combi regiment arrived 5 days before the siege began. They were landed up the coast, marched overland to the fortress. In the center we have another gun of the Canadian Bombardier, which was the first French colonial gunners raised in France's colonial empire. We also have a further 3 companies of Compagnie Franche de la Marine. We have a further gun of the Canadian Bombardier. And we have a few more militia and various companies from the different French regiments in the garrison at Louisbourg. The background music which I have, appropriately enough, seeing as it is a French battle, is works for Harpsichord by Olivia Bommel. Thank you very much for that. And also I want to put a plug in for Gin Lane, which is a Canadian group of reenactors who play 18th century music appropriate for this time period. And Gin Lane, in fact, was at the 1995 Louisbourg Grand Encampment, thus this is why they are in the background as well. To begin today's battle, I will start by noting that the dynamics for today's game are slightly different. The movement card, which is here, lists the different units which would be in the game. However, obviously we do not have pikemen or cavalry or dragoons or light horse. However, we do have light foot, muskets, cannons. As part of the battle, the French will begin the game by firing first. So let us begin and see how well the French guns are going to do looking seaward against the British invasion flotilla. And incidentally, the boats for this game are actually made up of several toy companies, Playmobil, Lego, and Matchbox. Hence why we have a pirate ship. Cannon bombardier commence bombardment on the ships. One gun has hit, a second gun has hit, and a third gun has hit. All three guns have inflicted damage on the ships coming ashore. The first gun has only hit one group of grenadiers. How lucky for them. Unfortunately, there are now bits and pieces floating in the North Atlantic. The second gun has done more damage on the Highlanders coming in. In fact, they actually have also lost a company, or two companies I should say. And finally, the third gun, which opened fire, has hit and has taken out one ranger company assaulting the beach. So, not bad for the first round for the French, firing on the approaching ships. The British will now attempt to land some of their troops onto the beach and will proceed against the defenses. In this game, for movement, I have put the movement as centimeters because of the fact that I'm Canadian, and also the fact that I only know metric, and as well, being in Japan, all the measurements are in metric, so thus this is why I'm going to use metric measurements. The soldiers come in. The grenadiers are moving in by 10 centimeters and thus are jumping off into the surf. And a French dog on the beach is attempting to warn his master that the British are coming. The first division of grenadiers has landed. However, they now have to organize themselves into actually charging the defenses. The Highlanders are moving in. Two boatloads of Highlanders are going to attempt to land, led by a piper. Their officer is carrying colors of the 1st Regiment of Foot, and their grenadier companies are further up the beach, so I shall put them with them, as well as awaiting the 45th Grenadier Company coming ashore on the next wave. One boatload of Rangers will also descend onto the beach to occupy these defenses. The light infantry and other Rangers are going to remain in their boats as a reserve, while the other boat of grenadiers is also going to hold back. However, their gun is going to provide some covering fire onto the beach. The British Royal Navy gunners open fire and proceed in smashing part of the defences, which has now made a gap into the French line. Something which I'm sure du Chambon is a little upset at this point. The French are now going to retaliate with musket fire. Compagnie Franche are presenting and firing, and proceed in taking out another company of Highlanders. Another company of Highlanders are down. The Combi are opening fire and are not doing so well for firing. The militia groups are opening up, and because they are militia, obviously they are rolling with a different die. Militia are using a 6-sided dice. Infantry are using an 8-sided dice. Artillery and Grenadiers and Rangers will be using a 10-sided dice. The militia begin to open fire. Miss. Hit, amazingly enough. They took out a Grenadier company of the 40th Regiment. Proceeding to fire again. One hit by the militia, another hit by a Compagnie Franche, so Stark's Rangers actually lose their company. And just to make it annoying for the British, the French guns are going to open fire on their ships, thus denying them the ability to retreat off the beach if they want to. One boat has now been sunk. The French commander's dog is still whining in the background, trying to warn because the gunfire is creating havoc on the dog's senses. And another boat has been sunk. So, to begin round 2 of the game, the British are still have a foothold on the beach, while the French are still trying to keep them from establishing a foothold.